Please comment where you are watching in the world. I've always been careful. Maybe too careful, some would say. But when you've traveled alone through unfamiliar cities, taken night trains across countries where you don't speak the language, and had one too many men follow you a little too long, you learn to add layers to your peace of mind. That's why I carry pepper spray. It's legal in most places I travel, and where it's not, I substitute with a small canister of dye spray or a shrill keychain alarm. Sometimes both. They hang from my keyring like charms, alongside a tiny Swiss Army knife and a whistle I've never had to use. I've never drawn the spray, not once. But it's there, and it makes me feel like I have an edge. Like I'm not just prey. I didn't expect it to become an issue on a date. I met Ewan Firth at a travel discussion group in a bookstore cafe in Leeds. He was charming in the way solo travelers often are, well-read, warm-eyed, quick to share stories. He'd spent time volunteering with a conservation project in Madagascar, or at least that's what he said. I liked that he asked questions, not just about where I'd been but how I'd felt there. We exchanged numbers. He texted the next day. "Coffee next week? I owe you a better story than the leech one." I said yes. We went to a small coffee shop tucked between two charity shops. He ordered a black Americano. I drank an oat milk latte. We talked for 2 hours, and I didn't feel the usual flicker of impatience or the sense that I was being auditioned. "Want to walk a bit?" he asked. We wandered through the city center. It was still light, a soft early spring dusk. The air smelled like exhaust and bakery bread. We talked about books, the rising cost of hostels, and whether it was ever okay to lie on your travel blog. He said yes. I disagreed. When we reached the car park, I slowed. My rental was only 2 blocks away, but I was already gripping my keys. I always do that on instinct, key between the fingers, pepper spray in my palm. "I'll walk you to your car," he said. I smiled. "Thanks, but I'm okay." "It's dark," he said. "Let me. It's only 2 blocks." "I insist," he said. He looked at me like I'd just called him useless. But I wasn't trying to offend him. I was just trying to get to my car without feeling like I had to politely manage someone else's ego. I didn't want to argue, so I nodded. We started walking. That's when he saw it. The pepper spray. I wasn't hiding it. It was on my keychain, swinging slightly as I walked. He stopped walking. "Is that pepper spray?" "Yeah," I said. He looked at me like I'd just pulled out a gun. "Do you think I'm going to attack you?" The tone in his voice changed. It wasn't curious anymore. It was sharp. Accusatory. "No," I said. "It's just something I carry." He scoffed. "Seriously? After I offered to walk you? You think I'm some kind of creep?" "It's not about you," I said. "I carry it everywhere." "What? You think every guy is a threat?" I didn't answer right away. He kept going. "This is what feminism's done, hasn't it? Turned every decent man into a suspect. You can't even accept a gesture without assuming the worst." I stopped walking. "Real nice guys," I said. "Don't mind that I protect myself." He stared at me. "You know what?" he said, stepping back. "You're paranoid. That's what this is. You're so scared of men, you can't even recognize when someone's being kind." I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to convince him. I just wanted to leave. So I pulled out my phone and called an Uber. Quietly. Calmly. He saw it and laughed. "Of course. Can't even walk to your car now." I said nothing. I stood there under the streetlight, keychain still in hand, until the car pulled up. I didn't look back when I got in. I blocked his number that night. Later, I saw he'd posted something vague on Facebook. A text post on a black background. Tired of being treated like a criminal just for being a man. I didn't comment, but I read the replies. They were full of preach, and same here, and this is why I don't even try anymore. All from men. And a few women who said, "Some girls just like drama." I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't had the pepper spray. If I'd walked to my car without it. If I'd let him feel powerful instead of threatened. But that's not the world I live in. The world I live in says, walk briskly. Don't smile too much. Don't be rude, but don't be warm. Carry something sharp. Don't let them walk you to your car. I still carry the spray. And the whistle. And the knife. I still go on dates, too. But I ask different questions now. Like, how do you feel about women carrying protection? If a man flinches at that, I know more than I need to. I've always liked first dates that start with a little anticipation. That extra few seconds where you're scanning the room for someone you've never actually met, hoping they look like their photo but better. That edge of curious feeling. It can be electric. Chris Halden had that effect on me. I spotted him before he saw me, tall, leaning against the hostess podium with one hand in his coat pocket and the other scrolling his phone. He looked cinematic, the kind of man who'd be cast as the mysterious stranger in a slow-burning thriller. Clean cut, but with just enough shadow in his jawline to suggest he didn't care all that much about being perfectly groomed. When he looked up and saw me, his whole face changed. He smiled, but it wasn't rushed. It spread, slow and warm, like he was genuinely pleased. "Marina," he said, stepping forward and kissing my cheek with an easy confidence. "Even better in motion." "In motion?" I grinned. "You know, real life. You've got presence." I laughed, half flattered, half cautious. I'd been on enough dates to know some compliments were rehearsed. But this one didn't feel like a pickup line. It felt considered. He helped me with my coat, and I caught a whiff of his cologne, something woody like cedar and smoke. It lingered just enough to make me want to lean in again. The restaurant was dimly lit, with low-hanging lamps and exposed brick walls. The kind of place where the menu was printed on recycled paper and the wine list came in a leather-bound journal. Our table was tucked into a corner, semi-private, with just enough space that our knees could accidentally touch under the table if we leaned the right way. I liked that. I liked the intimacy of it. We ordered wine, Tempranillo for him, something drier for me, and settled into a rhythm that surprised me. Conversation came easily. He asked questions that weren't just filler. Not just, "What do you do?" but "What does that work feel like on a hard day?" And "What kind of kid were you?" I told him about being a speech therapist, mostly working with young children, some with autism, some with developmental delays. I told him how much patience it required, how sometimes progress took months, but when it came, it was like watching someone climb out of a locked room. He listened, really listened. His eyes didn't drift, his phone stayed face down. He asked what it was like to work with kids who didn't speak at all. "It's like learning a new language," I said. "Except no one gives you a dictionary. You have to figure out what they're saying with their bodies, their eyes, until a sound finally comes, and then it's like the earth rearranges itself." "That's beautiful," he said, and I believed he meant it. He told me about his work in logistics, boring on the surface, he admitted, but useful. I move things from place to place. Quietly, efficiently. I like being the one who makes things work behind the scenes. I asked if he liked it. He shrugged. "It pays well, and it lets me afford nights like this." He reached out then, fingers brushing mine as he passed the olives. Our hands touched for a second too long to be accidental, and he didn't pull away. The tension between us was subtle, but unmistakable. It curled behind our words, in the way he looked at my mouth when I spoke, or how I leaned closer when he laughed. There was a kind of shared curiosity humming between us. I could already feel the question, what would happen after dinner? By the time we were on our third dish, seared scallops with preserved lemon, I was warm from the wine, and even warmer from the way his foot gently pressed against mine under the table. "I like the way you look at people," he said. "It's like you're trying to figure out who they really are, under all the layers." "Is that a compliment or a warning?" "Both," he said, smiling. "I like women who look closely, even if it makes me nervous." That line, it should have made me pause. But I was caught in the moment. The wine, the light, the way he said my name like it was something he'd already tasted and wanted more of. And then the phone buzzed. Not the sleek one he'd placed on the table earlier. This sound came from behind him. A faint vibration, barely audible under the low music. I noticed it because I notice everything. Occupational hazard. He reached behind him, into his coat pocket, and pulled out a smaller, older phone. Not a smartphone. One of those no-brand, cheap plastic models that reminded me of my first Nokia in high school. He looked at the screen, and just for a moment, the expression on his face went perfectly still. Then he quickly silenced it and shoved it back into his coat. I tilted my head. "Backup phone." He gave a small smile. "Something like that. Work? Just a backup." He waved it away like it didn't matter. Like it was a dead battery or a forgotten receipt. But I'd seen the way his eyes darted when it buzzed. Not alarm. Not guilt. Something else. Calculation. I sipped my wine and didn't press. But something inside me shifted. I excused myself to the restroom. Not dramatically, just a soft smile and a promise to be right back. Inside the stall, I pulled out my phone, opened a search bar, and typed the number. I didn't expect anything. Most people don't list burner numbers anywhere public. But this one was tied to a Craigslist listing. Discreet companionship. No strings. Clean. Confidential. In-call/out call. Text only. My blood went cold. I stared at the screen. I read it again. There was no mistaking the number. I didn't need to know more. I didn't need to ask him. The ad said everything. I stood there for another minute, the music from the dining room muffled by the door, my heart beating harder than it should have. Then I fixed my lipstick, smoothed my dress, and walked back to the table. He looked up, smile warm. Everything all right? I nodded, picked up my purse, and said, I have to go. His smile faltered. Wait, what? You okay? Early morning, I said. Sorry. Can I? No, I said, grabbing my coat. Thanks for dinner. He didn't follow. He didn't stop me. He just watched me go, his hands resting neatly on either side of the wine glass I'd left half full. Outside, I breathed in the night air. It was cool, crisp. The scent of city pavement and spring rain. I walked 2 blocks before I called a rideshare. I didn't want him to know my car. I didn't want him to know anything more than he already did. That night, around 1:17 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. You're smart. Most don't even check. I stared at it, then deleted it without replying. I blocked the number. Then I blocked his main one too. I locked down my social media. Changed my privacy settings. I even switched my profile pictures to neutral images, flowers, landscapes, things that didn't show my face. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. But I didn't sleep. The next morning, I sat with my coffee and tried to make sense of how something so promising had gone so off. I kept thinking of the way he looked at me, like I was a secret he wanted to keep. And I wondered, was I dinner or was I research? Did he catalog women like me? Did he have a folder with my name? I'll never know. But I do know this. I almost fell for him. I almost let myself believe. And that's what scared me most. He said she was crazy. That was the very first red flag. Not that I saw it that way at the time. At the time, it sounded like trust. Like confession. Like he was letting me into a secret. We were sitting on his couch, 2 weeks into whatever it was we were doing. My knees tucked under me, his arm around my shoulder, our 3rd bottle of wine open on the coffee table. He'd just shown me a playlist titled Songs for When I Miss You Already. I remember laughing and saying, You made this for me? He smiled. No, he said. I made it for her. But she never appreciated it. I tilted my head. Ex? He nodded. Raya. We were together for, I don't know, long enough. But she was intense. Always accusing me of things. Always needing proof I wasn't lying. If I didn't text back fast enough, she'd spiral. She once showed up at my work, crying, because I didn't answer her call during a meeting. He sighed, drained his glass. She wasn't well, he said. I tried to help her, but I had to leave. I couldn't keep fixing someone who didn't want to be fixed. I touched his hand. That sounds hard. He looked at me with this softness, like I'd just passed a test. You're different, he said. I can breathe with you. And just like that, I wanted to be the one who made him feel safe. I wanted to be the opposite of crazy. I didn't know it yet, but I was already being recruited. His name was Jude. Jude Latham. He was the kind of handsome that made you second-guess your instincts. Not just good-looking, but composed. Elegant, like he'd never had to raise his voice to get what he wanted. He worked as a consultant for a high-end architecture firm, wore dark colors, always smelled faintly of bergamot and clove. He read obscure nonfiction and had opinions about Italian cinema. He owned a Le Creuset Dutch oven and actually used it. From the outside, he was perfect. On the inside, I think he was hollow, but I didn't see that yet. For the first 6 weeks, everything felt curated. He remembered my favorite coffee order, showed up with flowers for no occasion, texted just enough to feel attentive, not clingy. He was careful with compliments, not too many, never generic. He made me feel chosen. He said things like, "You're easy to be around," and "I don't feel like I have to perform with you." I mistook that for intimacy, for honesty. We stayed in more than we went out. That suited me. I liked cooking together, falling asleep to documentaries we never finished. He'd rub my back while I washed my face at night. He brushed my hair once, in silence, while I talked about my mother's illness. He made me feel seen. But little things started slipping through. Once, I teased him about how many unread emails he had on his phone. He didn't laugh. "You always have to criticize," he muttered, and the air went cold. I apologized, even though it had been a joke. He didn't speak for the rest of the night. Another time, I asked if he wanted to come to a friend's birthday dinner. He said he'd think about it. Then the night of, he texted, "Not feeling up to it. Go without me." When I got home, he was sitting in the dark. "You look good in your stories," he said. "Lots of dudes in the background." I blinked. "You watch my stories?" He shrugged. "I just like knowing what you're up to." It didn't feel like a compliment. But still I stayed. Because when it was good, it was incredible. He'd kiss my forehead and whisper things like, "I don't know what I'd do if I lost you." He'd say I made him feel calm, like I was the only thing keeping his life from falling apart. And then one day, I found her. Raya. She messaged me on Instagram. Just a wave emoji. Then, a minute later, "You don't know me, but I think you should." Her profile was private. No bio. One profile photo, an image of her standing on a cliff, wind in her hair. She looked strong. Not crazy. I debated for a day. Then I replied, "Hi, I'm guessing you're Jude's ex." She responded immediately. "He's still doing it, isn't he?" I stared at the screen. "Doing what?" "Making you feel like you're the only one who understands him. Until you start asking questions." I didn't answer. I couldn't. "He lied to you about me, didn't he?" Said I was unstable. Controlling. Maybe even abusive. I felt my pulse in my throat. "I'm not trying to mess with you," she said. "I'm trying to warn you. Before it gets worse." I didn't want to believe her. But I did. Because I'd already started to feel the shift. The way he stared too long when I smiled at a waiter. The way he'd go silent for hours, then act like I was the one being distant. The way he'd say, "I don't want to fight," before I'd even raised my voice. I asked her for proof. She sent screenshots of messages. Long, rambling texts from him. Some apologetic. Some threatening. Some where he said exactly what he'd said to me, word for word. "You're the only one who gets me. I've never felt this calm with anyone else. I don't know what I'd do if I lost you." Seeing it in black and white made me feel used. Like I wasn't even a person to him. Just a script he was running again. I didn't respond to her after that. I felt like I owed her more. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I confronted him. I chose my words carefully. I spoke to Raya. He froze. He didn't ask how. He didn't ask why. He just said, "She's lying." And then, like a switch flipping, the mask slipped. "She's obsessed with ruining me," he said. "She's been doing this for years. Messaging every woman I date. Making up stories. I should have warned you. She showed me your messages. She faked them. Jude." He stood up. Fast. His wine glass tipped, splashing on the carpet. "You want to believe her? Go ahead. Be like all the rest. Let her poison your mind." His voice was louder now, but still controlled. Measured. I backed away. Just a step. He noticed. "You're afraid of me now," he said. "Seriously?" "I'm just giving you space," I said quietly. "And people call her unstable," he muttered. I grabbed my coat. "My phone. My keys." "Leaving already?" he said. "Did she tell you to do that too?" I didn't answer. I walked out, got in my car, locked the doors. He didn't follow. But for weeks after, he lingered, texting from new numbers. "I miss you. I'm worried about you. You were different." When I didn't respond, they turned colder. "You're not who I thought you were. You lied to me. You're just like her." Eventually, I changed my number. I still think about him sometimes. Not with longing. With unease. With shame. Because I wanted to be the one who saved him. And he knew that. That's the real horror. Not that he lied, but that he told just enough truth to keep me believing he didn't. I met Toby Griggs on a Tuesday, which for me was unusual. I almost never agree to midweek dates. My freelance schedule is already a mess, and I like to preserve at least a few evenings for sketching or reading, or just being still. But Toby had this energy over text, this kind of quirky, fast-talking charm that made me think, okay, maybe. He suggested a rooftop bar in Shoreditch, said it had a great view of the skyline and killer cocktails. I said yes, mostly for the view. Also because he had a golden retriever in one of his profile pictures, and I'm not made of stone. The minute I saw him, I knew he was going to be exhausting. He was already talking to the bartender when I arrived, gesturing with big, theatrical movements, like he was performing to an invisible audience. His hair was styled but intentionally messy, and he wore one of those oversized hoodies that makes everyone look like they're in a lo-fi music video. "Nina," he called out as I approached, arms wide like we were old friends. "You're real, and you're early. That's rare." He hugged me without asking, and I let him, even though I hate being touched by strangers. "I'm exactly on time," I said, smiling politely. "Even better," he said with a wink. I should have left then, but I didn't. We found a table near the edge, the city lights stretching out behind him. I ordered a gin and tonic. He ordered a cocktail called Millennial Pink and made a joke about how real men drink whatever the hell they want. I smiled. It was fine. Not funny, but not offensive. The first 20 minutes were okay. He talked a lot about his job, content strategy for lifestyle brands, his podcast, kind of a relationship debate meets social commentary thing, and his side hustle as a dating coach. That part made me blink. Wait, you're a dating coach? Yeah, he said, like it was the most normal thing. I help guys get better at first impressions, confidence, stuff like that. You'd be surprised how many dudes don't know how to hold a conversation. I sipped my drink. And you coach them? Through experience. Conversation breakdowns, video analysis, that kind of thing. Video analysis? He laughed. Don't worry. I don't secretly record people. That'd be creepy. I gave a tight smile. Then he changed the subject. Asked about my work. I told him I was a freelance illustrator, mostly children's books and editorial commissions. He said that was cool as hell, and asked if I ever drew my dates after they ghosted me. I laughed. Not yet, but maybe you'll inspire my next villain. He liked that. I started to relax a little. The light was soft, the breeze warm. The rooftop was buzzing but not too loud. It could have been a decent night. Then I noticed the small black object on the table, about the size of a matchbox. Sleek, with a tiny blinking light. Is that a camera? I asked. Toby grinned. Yeah, it's for my TikTok series, Dating in Real Time. You've probably seen it. I stared at him. He sipped his drink, completely unbothered. You're recording this? He shrugged. Not the whole thing. Just clips. For content. I mean, it's a public space, technically. You didn't ask. I don't need to, he said, still smiling. Also, you look amazing. Like the light is doing incredible things for your cheekbones. I sat back in my chair. Turn it off. He blinked, confused. Why? You're killing it. Seriously, the comments are gonna love you. You're streaming this right now? No, it's just being recorded. I'll go through the footage later, edit it down. You won't look bad. Promise. I stood up. Nina, come on, he said, still half laughing. It's harmless. You're the best date I've had on camera. Do you know how rare that is? I didn't say anything. I just walked. I left my drink, my coat, everything. He messaged me twice that night. Toby, hey, sorry if that freaked you out. I thought you'd be cool with it. You were so natural. Toby, you've got the kind of face that wants to be on camera. I didn't respond. The next morning, I found out he'd posted the video anyway. He'd edited it to make me look like I was flattered, like I was blushing for him. He added captions like, when she finally meets a real man, and beta female reacts to alpha energy. The comments were brutal. Some said I was low vibe. Others called me a cold fish. One said I looked like I probably had cats and a vibrator collection. Another asked for my at so they could slide in with better energy. I reported the video. TikTok flagged it for review, but nothing happened. His channel stayed up. So did the clip. I changed all my usernames that day, locked down my accounts, turned off DMs, changed my profile pictures to something neutral, switched to private. I didn't go on another date for a while, and I never went back to that rooftop bar. I've always believed that food is a language, maybe the only one I speak fluently. I'm not good at small talk. I'm not effortlessly flirty, but give me an open kitchen in a few hours, and I can make you fall in love. Or at least, that's what I used to think. That night, I'd made almond-stuffed ravioli. From scratch, I rolled the dough on my tiny butcher block countertop, kneading it until it was silky and elastic. I pulsed roasted almonds with ricotta and lemon zest in my food processor, tasting and adjusting until the filling hit that perfect creamy salty sweet balance. It took me the better part of the afternoon, and I enjoyed every second of it. Cooking calms me. It gives me control in a world where people cancel last minute, lie on dating apps, and forget to mention catastrophic allergies. I met Liam Brack on an app that tried too hard to be wholesome. His profile photo was a little blurry. He said it was taken on a hike, which I assumed was code for, I haven't updated my pictures since 2017. But his smile was disarming, and his messages were warm. He said things like, I'm low maintenance, and I'm just looking for someone real. That last one got me. I'd had enough of curated, filtered, performative. I wanted someone real too. When I suggested we skip the overpriced wine bar and do dinner at mine, he didn't hesitate. That sounds perfect, he said. I'll bring the wine. You pick the music. I did both. The playlist was mostly Chet Baker and some moody French jazz. The wine glasses were mismatched. One had a chip I turned toward myself so he wouldn't see. My flat isn't big, but it's warm, and it smells like butter and citrus and herbs most of the time. That night it smelled especially good, lemon zest, brown butter, a little sage. When Liam buzzed, I wiped flour from my hands and opened the door with a nervous grin. He looked better in person, taller, sharper jaw, eyes that crinkled when he smiled. Wow, he said, stepping into the hallway. It smells incredible in here. Like a restaurant, but better. I laughed. Welcome to Chez Isabelle. We only have one table and an extremely stressed chef. He handed me a bottle of red Malbec, decent label, not too cheap. I hope this works. It'll breathe in the corner while we eat, I said, and he smiled like I'd just cast a spell. We sat at my kitchen table, which doubles as my prep station. I served the ravioli with sage butter and a dusting of Parmesan. He took one bite and closed his eyes. Holy shit, he said. Isabel, this is insane. You made this? From scratch. I said it casually, but inside I was glowing. You could charge $100 for this. Easy. I laughed. I'd settle for not burning the tart. Oh, there's dessert? Apricot almond tart. One of my favorites. He groaned happily and took another bite. I'm in heaven. We talked while we ate. He told me about his job in digital marketing, his dog named Baxter, how he once tried to make his own sourdough and created something between a brick and a biological hazard. He was funny, self-deprecating, and seemed genuinely interested in me, not just the food. At one point, I asked the question I always ask. You sure you don't have any allergies? I'd asked it over text, too, but I like to double-check. People forget things. Or lie. He shook his head. Nope. I'll eat anything. I'm easy. That phrase. I'd remember it later. I'll eat anything. After dinner, I sliced the tart. The crust was perfectly golden, the fruit still soft, and the almond frangipane slightly caramelized at the edges. I dusted the top with powdered sugar and a tiny sprinkle of ground almond. Presentation matters. He took a bite and sighed dramatically. Okay, now I'm in love, he said. This is the best thing I've eaten in my entire life. I smiled. I get shy around compliments, especially about food. I don't know why. Maybe because it's the only thing I truly put myself into. We were halfway through dessert when he went quiet. I noticed him touch his throat. Once. Then again. You okay? I asked. He swallowed, winced. Yeah, I think so. Just scratchy. He stood up, a little unsteady. His face had lost its color. Wait, he said. Did that have tree nuts? I froze. Yes, I said slowly. Almond. In the ravioli and the tart. You said you didn't have any allergies. His eyes widened. Shit. I started to move toward him, but he pulled something out of his coat pocket. A small, sleek device with an orange cap. An EpiPen. I don't like to make a fuss, he said, and then jabbed it into his thigh. I was already on the phone with emergency services, heart pounding. I gave them my address, told them what happened, tried to keep my voice calm while Liam sat back down, breathing heavily, one hand still on his throat. He wasn't panicking, not outwardly, but I could see the fear in his eyes. His lips were swelling. He was sweating. His whole body looked like it wanted to crawl out of itself. The paramedics arrived in under 10 minutes. They spoke to him, checked his pulse, asked me what he'd eaten. I gave them a list, my voice flat, like I was reciting a recipe. They nodded. The EpiPen helped. Good instincts, one of them said. We're taking him in for observation. He gave me a weak thumbs up as they wheeled him out. And then, he was gone. I didn't cry, not then. I just stood in my kitchen, the smell of butter and almonds still thick in the air, and stared at the half-eaten tart. I'd almost killed someone. On a date. In my own flat. Because he didn't want to make a fuss. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, knees hugged to my chest, watching the candle burn down to a stub. I kept replaying it, every bite, every compliment, every red flag I'd ignored. Who brings an EpiPen on a date and doesn't mention they need it? Who says I'll eat anything, when almonds could send them into anaphylactic shock? He texted me the next morning. Liam, alive. Back home. Thanks for acting fast. Seriously. Don't blame yourself. I was careless. I responded instantly. Me, I'm so sorry. I never would have served that if I'd known. He didn't reply. A week passed. Then two. No calls. No texts. I deleted his number, but not the thread. I kept rereading those few lines, trying to find some hidden meaning, some clue as to what he was thinking. And then 2 weeks later, I got a notification. New Yelp review. From Liam B. I didn't even know he had Yelp. I clicked the link with a sinking feeling in my gut. The food was extraordinary. The chef, talented and clearly passionate. Unfortunately, communication was lacking. When the dinner nearly became my last supper, she handled it with grace and urgency. 3 stars. 3 stars. I read it again. Then again. Not one word about forgetting to mention his allergy. Not one word about his mistake. Just a smirking little jab about communication. I clicked on his profile. He'd reviewed other places, 2 bars, cafes, even a dentist. His tone was always the same. Breezy. Smug. Slightly superior. In one he wrote, "Great service, but the bartender wore too much cologne." 2 stars. I closed the tab. I wanted to scream. Or throw something. Or message him and say, "Are you serious? You nearly died, and you left a passive-aggressive Yelp review like I overcooked your steak." But I didn't. I went into the kitchen, opened the baking cupboard, and pulled down the jar of almonds. And I threw them in the bin. I haven't cooked with nuts since. I met him at a panel discussion titled Gendered Spaces in Modern Urbanism. The kind of event where everyone's wearing earth tones, and someone inevitably says decolonize without irony. He stood during the Q&A, asked a question about the intersection of feminist architecture and emotional labor, and used the word hegemony twice, once correctly. Afterward, he found me by the coffee urn and said, "You asked the best question on stage." I said, "Thanks. I didn't ask one." He laughed. "Exactly. You let it breathe." I should have known. His name was Theo. He was tall, wore round glasses, and had a canvas messenger bag filled with books by women authors, strategically visible. I saw bell hooks peeking out like a calling card. He asked for my number because he was curating a dinner for thoughtful people. I said I wasn't sure I counted. He said, "You absolutely do. Feminist men need sharp women around them. Keeps us honest." I gave him my number. Not because I was charmed, because I was curious. We met for coffee before the dinner. He ordered a turmeric latte with oat milk, but specified not too foamy. Then he launched into a monologue about masculinity. Not toxic masculinity. That term's tired, he said. I prefer inherited dominant structures. He told me he journaled every morning about unlearning. He said, "It's hard, you know, being raised to interrupt, to take space. I'm actively working on it." He interrupted me 3 times in that sentence. I pointed it out. He smiled sheepishly. "See? Exactly. That's why I need women like you in my orbit. Orbit, not life. Not friendship. Orbit." I took a sip of my very foamy coffee and nodded. At the dinner, it was exactly what I expected. A curated table of women doing invisible labor. One brought homemade sourdough. Another arranged the flowers. A third had printed name cards in calligraphy. Theo welcomed us with a toast. To the women who hold the world together. He didn't cook. Didn't pour wine. Just held the room like he was hosting a salon in 1863. When I tried to speak about my work, designing accessible public spaces, he cut in. Said, "That's fascinating. Actually, that reminds me of this essay I read in N+1. And off he went. 45 minutes later, I knew his thoughts on pedestrian flow, Jane Jacobs, and why his ex-girlfriend didn't understand what he was trying to build. I didn't know the name of the woman sitting next to me. After dinner, he walked me to my car. Said, "You have such a grounding energy. It's rare." I said, "You didn't ask me a single question." He blinked. "I didn't. No. I thought we were vibing. You were talking." "Oh," he said. "Wow. I guess I have more to unlearn." I nodded. "Start with silence." He texted the next day. "Hey, I hope I didn't take up too much space. I really valued your presence. You're the kind of woman who makes men better." I didn't reply, because I'm not a syllabus, or a mirror, or a tool for someone else's growth. A week later, I was at another panel. Different topic. Same chairs. I saw him in the back row. He raised his hand during the Q&A. Said, "I'm still learning when not to speak." Then spoke for 5 minutes. He said it with a smile, like it was a compliment, as if the sentence wasn't wrapped in barbed wire. "You're too smart to be single." I looked up from my wine, unsure whether to laugh or leave. He was already leaning back like he'd just delivered something clever. Something generous. I said, "What does that mean?" He gestured vaguely. "You know, you've got the whole package. Brains. Ambition. I mean, you're a professor, right?" He said professor like it was a party trick. Like I'd mentioned I could juggle or recite pi to 50 digits. I nodded. "Yes. I teach linguistics." "Exactly," he said. "You're sharp. It's intimidating in a good way." There it was. The backhand. I said, "It's only intimidating if you're insecure." He paused. Smiled again. "That's what I like about you. You don't pretend." But that wasn't true. I was pretending all night. Pretending to be charmed. Pretending his jokes were funny. Pretending I didn't already know how the evening would end. His name was Nathan. He was a consultant. He said that often like it explained everything. I met him at a charity gala. One of those events with string quartets and low lighting and too many awkward elbow touches. We were seated at the same table, between a retired judge and a woman who collected antique coins. He asked what I did. I told him. He said, "So you know all the big words?" I said, "I know the useful ones." He laughed and told me he liked articulate women. I should have left then, but I'm curious by nature. And curiosity is how I've learned almost everything, especially about men. We went on 3 dates before the shift began. Subtle at first. He'd interrupt when I answered questions, then rephrase what I'd said to sound more palatable. He'd translate me in front of friends. "She's talking about how language shapes thought. Basically, like if you don't have a word for something, you can't really think it. Isn't that wild?" He'd say things like, "That's what I love about you, your brain is like a machine." And I'd smile, but my stomach would twist. Because I didn't want to be a machine. I wanted to be listened to. One night, we went to a trivia bar. Not my idea. His. "You'll crush it," he said. I didn't want to crush anything. I just wanted to relax. But he insisted. We played on a team with 2 of his friends. I answered most of the questions. Geography, literature, pop culture, even sports, thanks to my brother's relentless obsession with baseball statistics. By the end of the night, we'd won a bottle of wine and a round of applause from the bartender. Nathan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. In the car, he said, "You didn't leave much room for anyone else to shine." I looked at him. "You asked me to play." "Yeah, but next time you could let someone else answer a few." "You mean you?" He didn't respond. Just turned up the radio. He started calling me professor in bed. At first, I thought it was a kink. Then I realized it was a performance. He wanted to be the man who could handle me. The one who could keep up. But it always came with a challenge. He once said, "I bet I can make you forget all your theories." I said, "Why would I want to?" One morning, I woke up to a note by the coffee machine. Had to run to a client meeting. Made you a smoothie. Don't work too hard, Brainiac. I stared at the word. Brainiac. It hung in the air like a mosquito. I poured the smoothie down the sink. The last straw came during dinner with my department chair. Nathan had insisted on coming. Said he wanted to see my world. Halfway through the meal, he started explaining my dissertation. Incorrectly. He said, "What Liana's work shows is that language, well, it's kind of like code. And if you crack the code, you can manipulate people's beliefs." I opened my mouth. He kept talking. And that's why she's so valuable. She gets into the psychology of it. Like persuasion, rhetoric, all that stuff. My chair looked at me. I smiled tightly. Actually, my research focuses on the relationship between syntax and memory retention. It's not about manipulation. It's about cognitive load. Nathan chuckled. Same difference. I said nothing. But I was done. That night, he asked what was wrong. I said, "You don't listen." He said, "That's not fair." I said, "Neither is rewriting my work to sound like a TED Talk." He said, "I'm just trying to help you be more relatable." I said, "Relatable to who?" He said, "To people who don't live in academia." I said, "I don't need a translator. I need a partner." He didn't like that. He said, "You're being impossible." I said, "I'm being clear." The next morning, I left the necklace he'd given me on the windowsill. It wasn't gold. It was silver, shaped like a lowercase g. I asked once what the G was for. He said, "Genius." I thought it was sweet at the time. Now I know it was a trophy. He texted a week later, "You'll regret walking away from someone who sees your potential." I didn't reply, because I don't need to be seen as potential. I'm already the thing. On our 3rd date, He took me to a cabin in the woods. That should have been the first red flag. Not because of the cabin itself. It was gorgeous, all cedar panels and clean lines, with a fireplace that looked like it had been pulled from a design magazine. No, it was the phrasing. "I've got a little place in the woods," he said. "Perfect for unplugging." Unplugging. That word always makes me nervous. It translates to no signal, no map, no quick exit. But I'd said I wanted to get away. I'd complained about the city, about the same conversations over the same cocktails in the same bars. And Theo, God, even his name was curated, offered something else. Something quieter. Intentional, he called it. We could just exist without all the noise. I said yes, because I wanted to believe that stillness could be romantic. Because I wanted to believe that someone could want me without needing to perform it. Because he made me feel seen. Until I realized he was only watching. We left on a Friday. Theo picked me up in a car that didn't match him. Too practical, too clean. He said it was a rental. I didn't question it. He packed the trunk himself, a bag of groceries, a bottle of wine, and a box that he wouldn't let me open. "Surprises," he said with a wink. The drive was long. Longer than I expected. I lost signal an hour in. I should have said something. I should have asked for a pin drop or a backup charger, or literally anything that would have allowed me to find my way back later. But I didn't. Because I trusted him. Because he said, "You'll love it when we get there." Because he kept his hand on my knee for most of the drive, and I mistook that for safety. The cabin was beautiful. That's what made it worse. It wasn't the setting of a horror movie. It was the setting of an Instagram reel. Soft rugs, low lighting, artisanal candles with names like Smoke and Birch and Forest Memory. A stack of books on the coffee table with titles like The Art of Solitude and Digital Detox. He poured us each a glass of wine, lit the fire, cooked mushroom risotto like it was nothing. "I like feeding people," he said. I didn't know then that he also liked starving them. Not of food, of certainty. That night, we sat on the couch, legs tangled, music playing low from a Bluetooth speaker. We talked about childhood fears. He said his was drowning. I said mine was being trapped. He kissed me softly. Said, "I'd never trap you." That was the last thing he said before I saw the lock. It was subtle, built into the inside of the front door. Not a deadbolt or a chain. Those would have been too obvious. This was a switch, flush with the wood, barely visible unless you were looking for it. But I was looking, because I'd gone to get more water and noticed that the doorknob didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I tapped the wood. Solid. I looked out the window. Woods. Thick, dark, endless. I walked back to the living room. He was still on the couch, legs stretched out, sipping wine. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice light. "The door's stuck?" He smiled. Not concerned. Not surprised. Just calm. "Oh yeah," he said. "It does that sometimes. It's old. You just have to jiggle it." I went back. Tried again. Jiggled. Still stuck. I returned. Still nothing. He stood, walked over, tried it himself. Nothing. He didn't look concerned. He looked amused. Finally, he said, "Maybe it's testing our trust." I laughed nervously. "What?" He looked at me like I was missing something obvious. "You know, like maybe this is one of those things where the universe forces us to be still. To trust. That it'll open when we're ready." I stared at him. "I'm sorry," I said. "Are you serious?" He shrugged. "Why not? We've got food. Wine. A fire. What else do we need?" "A working door," I said. He smiled again. "You're overthinking it." That night, I barely slept. I pretended to. I lay next to him, eyes closed, heart racing. At one point, I got up to use the bathroom. On the way back, I tried the door again. Still locked. I checked the windows. They didn't open either. Who designs a cabin with no escape? Who brings someone there and calls it intentional? Who thinks trust is something you prove with silence? The next morning, he made pancakes. Like nothing was wrong. He talked about the birds, the trees, the clarity that comes from boredom. He asked me about my biggest regret. I said, not bringing my car. He laughed. I didn't. We spent the day reading. Or rather, pretending to read. I kept glancing at the door. He kept watching me glance. Every time I moved toward it, he said something to distract me. "Can I read you this line? Do you want to try meditating together? Do you ever think about how much time we waste on other people's expectations?" I started to feel like I was being studied. Like everything I said was being filed away. like I was a test subject in a social experiment I hadn't agreed to. That night, I asked again, "Can we just call someone?" He shook his head. "No signal, remember? Then we should leave tomorrow. Early." He smiled. "Or we could stay another night. Stretch it out. Really disconnect." I looked at him. "No," I said. "I want to go home." His smile didn't move, but his eyes did. They narrowed slightly, like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. At 3 a.m., I got up again, tried the door. Still locked. This time, I checked the box he'd brought in the trunk. It was under the bed. Inside, rope. Candles. Blindfolds. Nothing illegal. Nothing overtly threatening. Just suggestive. Enough to make my skin crawl. Enough to make me realize that I wasn't being hosted. I was being handled. Morning came. He made coffee. I didn't drink it. I said I had a migraine. He offered to rub my temples. I declined. Then I said, "The door." One more time. He sighed. "Naomi, I thought you trusted me." I didn't answer. Just looked at him. Long enough for the silence to stretch. Finally he stood. Walked to the door. Pressed something behind the frame. It opened. Easily. No resistance. No jiggling. Just open. I walked out without speaking. He followed. "Don't be like this," he said. "You're reacting. You're not seeing the bigger picture." I kept walking. He didn't stop me, but he didn't apologize either. Just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. I walked down the dirt road for 30 minutes before I found signal. Called a cab. Didn't speak the entire ride home. He texted that night. "You failed the test. Then, you could have had something real. Then, you'll regret this." I didn't reply. I just blocked his number. Then I posted a review of the cabin on every platform I could find. Locked in from the inside. Stay away. I don't know if he still rents it. Don't care. It took me a while to date again. Longer to sleep without checking the locks. Even longer to stop blaming myself for not running sooner. But I do sleep now. And I do date. And I always bring my own car. And I never trust a man who says, "Put your phone away. Let's unplug." Because sometimes the silence isn't peaceful. It's curated. I've always liked first dates. Even the awkward ones. Even the ones where conversation stumbles, or the wine is overpriced, or they ask if I'm really a teacher. There's something about the hope of it that I find beautiful. That quiet leap of, could this be something? I don't date often. I work long hours teaching second graders how to spell because, and friend, which is ironic considering how often adults forget the meaning of both. But when I do make time, I try to show up fully. I dress with care, I listen, I believe in giving people a fair shot. So when Tristan Meller walked into the seafood restaurant in Mayfair with a tailored coat and a smile that looked like it belonged in a movie, I thought, okay, let's see. He was late by 7 minutes. Not enough to annoy me, but enough to suggest a certain ease with time. He apologized with a kiss on the cheek and a compliment about my earrings, small silver hoops. Nothing dramatic. I liked that he noticed. "You look radiant," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. I blushed, half out of politeness, half because no one had described me that way before. He ordered a bottle of wine before I had the chance to look at the drinks menu. "Trust me," he said. "This one's smooth. Like conversation with you, I hope." I laughed. He was charming. Maybe too charming. But I'd rather someone try too hard than not at all. We talked. About our jobs, he was in consulting, vague but well-practiced, favorite cities, he named 5, and the books we kept meaning to read. He had an easy way of leaning forward when I spoke, like my words were the only ones in the room. I could see why people liked him. When the waiter arrived, he took the lead. "We'll start with oysters," he said. Then 2 of the grilled lobster. "You like lobster, right?" I hesitated. "I've only had it once." "Then tonight's the second time. My treat. You deserve a proper meal." He smiled like it was a gift, like I'd just won something. I didn't argue. I was flattered. And hungry. The food arrived in courses, delicate and expensive. The wine was, as he promised, smooth. The conversation drifted toward childhood memories and ideal vacations. He told me he'd grown up in Bristol, that his mother taught him how to cook, that he once got lost in Rome and ended up drinking wine with a group of nuns. I wasn't sure how much was true, but he told it well. By dessert, I was relaxed. Not in love, not even infatuated, but open. Curious. He ordered the creme brulee for us to share. "I don't believe in eating sweet things alone," he said. "It's like laughter, It needs company. I smiled. Then the bill arrived. He reached for it with flair. Opened it. Paused. Then his hand went to his coat pocket. Then the other. Then his jeans. He patted each area like a magician searching for a missing prop. "Ah," he said, wincing. "You're going to kill me." "What?" "I forgot my wallet." I blinked. He looked sheepish. I feel like an idiot. I was rushing out of the flat. Thought I had everything. He closed the bill folder and slid it toward me. "Could you cover this? I'll get you next time. I promise." Something in my stomach dropped. But I nodded. "Sure," I said. He kissed my cheek again. "You're amazing. Truly." Then he was gone. No lingering. No hesitation. Just gone. I opened the bill. £162. I stared at the number like it might change. Then I paid. The next morning I checked my phone. Nothing. No thank you. No, I had a great time. No Venmo request. Nothing. I opened Instagram. He'd unfollowed me. I opened the app where we met. His profile was gone. I sat on the edge of my bed, fully dressed, holding my phone like it might apologize. Then I called my friend Maya. "Wait," she said. "Tristan Meller?" "Yes." She went quiet. "I've heard that name before." "Hold on." She texted 2 minutes later with a screenshot. A group chat message from another friend, dated 2 weeks ago. "Anyone know this guy? Tristan Meller? Took me to a seafood place. Ordered lobster. Forgot his wallet. Unfollowed me by morning." I stared at it. Then another message came in. Same thing happened to Priya. Different restaurant. Same story. I sat with that for a long time. The part of me that wanted to believe in people felt bruised. Not broken, but sore. Like I'd been walking uphill without realizing it, and now gravity was kicking in. I thought about the way he looked at me. The compliments. The stories. The way he'd said, "my treat," like it was a vow. It was a performance. I'd bought a ticket and paid for the props. I told myself to let it go, but I couldn't. So I did what I always do when something doesn't make sense. I researched. I found a Reddit post under a throwaway account. The title, "Serial Dater Scammer in London?" The post was vague but familiar. Met a guy named Tristan. Seemed great. Took me to dinner. Ordered fancy food. Forgot his wallet. Blocked me the next day. There were 14 comments. 7 of them echoed the exact same experience. Same name. Same smile. Same disappearing act. One woman said he'd even taken a photo of her during dinner and said, "You'll want to remember tonight." She never got the photo. I thought about reporting him. But to who? It wasn't illegal. Just awful. A slow con. A soft theft. He didn't steal my purse. Just my trust. A week later, I was walking past the same seafood restaurant. I paused. Inside, in the window seat, was Tristan. Different woman. Same posture. Same coat. I didn't go in. I didn't confront him. I just stood there, watching for a moment, until he looked up and saw me. His face didn't change. He didn't flinch. Just looked at me like I was a stranger passing by. Which I suppose I was. I walked away. Bought myself a croissant from a bakery down the street. Ate it on a bench in the sun. Tasted better than lobster. I still go on dates. Not as often. But I do. When I tell this story, people ask me if I'd do anything differently. And I say no. It started with a DM that felt benign enough. "Hey, I know this is a little forward, but I saw your post about trying new places in Islington. There's a great little Italian spot I've been meaning to check out. Want to join me?" His profile was clean. A few photos, one hiking, one in a suit, one blurry shot of a dog that may or may not have been his. His name was Derek. He spelled "you're" correctly. That's more than I can say for most of the messages I get. I checked our mutuals, none. Scanned for red flags, none obvious, and replied, "Sure. I'm free Thursday." Sometimes I say yes just to prove I still can. The restaurant was dimly lit, the kind of place with too many framed photos on the walls and menus that folded like tiny maps. I arrived 5 minutes early. Derek walked in exactly on time, wearing a crisp button-down and holding a duffel bag. Odd choice for dinner, I thought. He greeted me with a smile that was almost too wide and a hug that lingered slightly too long. "I got us a booth," he said, gesturing to the back corner. "More privacy." I followed him, my gut already whispering something I didn't yet want to hear. We sat. The waiter brought water and a complimentary bowl of breadsticks. I reached for one. That's when he unzipped the duffel bag and pulled out 6 silver sachets. He laid them on the table between us like we were about to perform a seance or barter in a post-apocalyptic economy. I froze mid-breadstick. "What's this?" I asked. He grinned. "Just something exciting I've been working on." I looked down. Each sachet was labeled with words like Vital Burn, Neuromax, and Sleep Slim. The kind of branding that screams late-night infomercial energy. "I thought this was dinner," I said. "It is," he said. "But I also wanted to talk to you about something. You've got great energy. The kind of energy that sells." I blinked. "I'm sorry, sells?" He leaned in, lowering his voice like we were conspiring, not colliding. "It's not just a product. It's a movement. I'm building a team, and you seem like someone who gets it." I stared at him. "Is this a job interview?" "It's both," he said, smiling. "If you're open-minded." Let me rewind. My name's Zara. I'm a marketing assistant at a boutique agency that mostly rebrands wellness influencers and boutique candle companies. I'm good at what I do. I know how to read people, how to decode their tells, predict their pivot points. I know when someone is performing confidence and when they're just trying to sell me something. Derek? He was trying to do both. "Let me show you something," he said, pulling out a tablet. Before I could object, he launched into a PowerPoint presentation. On a date, at an Italian restaurant. The first slide said, "Redesign your life." The second, "The old way is broken." The third, "Imagine an oh boss. No limits. No ceiling." I took a slow sip of my water. "I thought we were going to order food," I said. "We can," he replied. "But don't you want to feed your future first?" I stared at him. He talked for 20 minutes straight. About his team. About ground floor opportunities. About passive income. About how people waste their potential working for someone else's dream. He quoted Elon Musk. He used the phrase financial freedom 7 times. He said, "Women in this business thrive. You're naturally persuasive." I said, "Because we've been taught to be likable to survive." He didn't laugh. He just handed me a sachet labeled Glow Fuel and said, "This one's our best seller for women." I put it down. He kept going. I asked, "What do you actually do?" He replied, "I empower others to build their own economy." I said, "That's not a job title." He smiled like I just didn't get it. I didn't stay for dessert. When the waiter came over, I ordered a sparkling water and asked for the bill. Derek looked surprised. "You're leaving?" "I thought this was a date," I said. "Not a recruitment pitch." He laughed. "You're overreacting. This is a chance. Most people would kill for this." I stood up. "That's your problem," I said. "You think everyone's a prospect. Not a person." He didn't argue. He just looked annoyed, like I'd wasted his time. He messaged me later that night. "You missed out on a business partnership. Women with your attitude never get rich." I blocked him, then told my friends. We laughed, until one of them said, "Wait, was it Derek with the sachets?" And another replied, "Oh my God. He took me to a sushi place. Same pitch." And another, "He tried to sell me protein powder in the middle of a dog park." We made a group chat called Sachet Survivors. By the end of the week, it had 7 members. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I've worked in marketing long enough to know how easily ambition can become a script. How some people rehearse charisma instead of developing character. How they think opportunity is something you offer in exchange for attention, not respect. A few weeks later, I saw him again. Different cafe. Same duffel bag. He was seated with a new woman, smiling like he'd just cracked the code to her soul. I walked past without stopping, but I left a sachet of Glow Fuel on their table as I passed. No words, just a warning. I still go on dates. But now, when someone says I have something exciting to share, I ask, with sincerity or with slides? Because I'm not interested in being recruited. I'm interested in being seen. The first time I saw the woman, I thought she was looking for someone. The cafe was crowded, all warm wood and city noise, the kind of place where you mutter your name at the counter and hope your coffee doesn't end up with the wrong milk. I'd taken the corner seat, habit really, and Marcus sat across from me, smiling like he'd already won something. And maybe he had. He was charming, in that practiced way. The kind that makes you feel seen, like he's looking through the noise to find you specifically. The kind that makes you forget, briefly, that you work in cybersecurity and should know better. But across the room, near the door, there was a woman. Late 20s like me. Dark hair. holding a takeaway cup she clearly wasn't drinking. And she was staring at us. Not Marcus. Us. I didn't say anything at first. Didn't want to feed the part of my brain that always assumed the worst. But when I got up to use the bathroom, she followed me. And everything changed. Let me start at the beginning. His name was Marcus Vale. Or at least, that's what he told me. We met on an app called Lens. One of those curated dating platforms for intentional people. Whatever that means. His profile was simple. A photo of him on a rooftop in Prague. A quote from Thelonious Monk. A line that said, "I like people who ask interesting questions." His messages were thoughtful. He didn't open with "hey" or "what's up" or something that made me want to delete the app and go back to watching documentaries alone. He asked about my work. I told him I was a senior analyst for a cybersecurity firm. He didn't flinch. Most men either got weirdly impressed or weirdly insecure. He just said, "That explains the precision in your syntax." We joked about true crime podcasts and obscure jazz albums. He sent me a playlist. I actually liked it. We swapped memes that didn't feel pulled from the main page of Reddit. And I'll admit it, I swooned a little. I've always had a soft spot for clever men. The ones who know how to stitch humor into intelligence. The ones who read you like a novel, but don't try to rewrite the ending. Our first date was at a bookstore cafe. He brought me a copy of a poetry collection I'd mentioned in passing. Said he found it in a second-hand shop and thought of me. I told myself not to be impressed. I failed. The second date was a rooftop bar. He wore a navy coat and drank whiskey without theatrics. Told me he liked the way I looked when I was thinking. Said it like it was a secret. By the third date, I was already imagining a fourth. Then came the woman. In the bathroom, she didn't introduce herself. Didn't ask if I had a second. She just said, "His name's not Marcus." I stared at her. "I'm sorry. It's Daniel. Daniel Quinn." He told me the same stories. Same favorite album. Same jokes. I blinked. I dated him. Briefly. A few months ago. Until I found out I wasn't the only one. I didn't know what to say. My brain split into two. One half filing this as a misunderstanding. The other opening every mental drawer labeled instincts and red flags. "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded. He told me his sister lives in Bristol. That he majored in comparative lit. That he was allergic to strawberries. Any of that sound familiar? All of it did. I thanked her. She left without saying anything else. When I returned to the table, Marcus, Daniel, was scrolling his phone. He looked up and smiled. "Everything okay?" I sat down slowly. "What year did you graduate from university?" He paused. 2009. I tilted my head. "You told me it was 2011. He blinked. "Did I?" I kept my voice even. "What city does your sister live in again?" He hesitated too long. "Leeds." I didn't flinch. Just looked him straight in the eye and asked, "How many of us are you talking to right now?" He didn't answer. He just picked up his coat, his phone, and walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't message. Didn't block me. Because he didn't need to. He'd already moved on. I'm not proud of what I did next. But I'm not sorry either. I ran a search, obviously. Used what I had, a phone number, some metadata from our chats, a photo I reverse searched through private tools. It took me a day. His real name was Daniel Quinn, 34. No criminal record, no LinkedIn, no public footprint worth a damn. But he was clever. Used different names on different platforms. Rotated profile pictures. Changed his Spotify username weekly. But patterns don't lie. I found at least 9 profiles. Different names, same phrasing. Same curated likes. Same string of women commenting. Such a great first date. Thanks for the book rec. Let's hang again. I messaged 3 of them. 2 replied. One of them had dated him for 6 weeks. Never saw his flat. He always picked her up. She found out he was still on apps when a friend matched with him under a different name. The other woman had met him twice. Said he told her she was refreshing, that she made him feel calm. Then ghosted her after she asked for his last name. I created a spreadsheet. It wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. A week later, I saw him. Different cafe. Different woman. Same coat. He didn't see me. She was laughing. He was leaning in. I watched invisible. And for the first time, I wasn't angry. Just tired. Because I realized this wasn't about me. It wasn't even about them. It was about him. The control. The symmetry. The illusion of deep connection without the mess of actual intimacy. He didn't want to know us. He wanted to be known. I've told this story 3 times now. Once to my best friend, who made me tea and said, "You should write about this." Once to a stranger on Reddit who posted about being catfished and needed to feel less alone. And once to myself in the middle of the night when I started to believe maybe I'd imagined it all. But I didn't. And I won't. Because I still believe in connection. But I also believe in firewalls. In screenshots. In women who whisper warnings in bathrooms. And in walking away when someone forgets that honesty isn't optional. I never heard from him again. But sometimes I imagine him, sitting across from someone new, smiling with that practiced softness, quoting the same jazz albums, telling her she looks like someone who reads the sky. And I hope, truly, that she knows how to ask better questions. It started with a compliment on a photo I don't even like. Such a powerful stillness in this one. Most people don't understand beauty. But I do. It was a picture from 2 years ago, me sitting on the floor of my studio, hair tied up with a paint-smeared scarf, staring out the window like I was waiting for something that never arrived. The comment was from someone named Elliot. I clicked the profile. Few posts. All moody skies and quotes about light. The bio said, "Not all eyes that look see." Fine, I thought. Poetic, maybe pretentious, but harmless. He followed me. I followed back. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. We matched on Hinge a few days later. I recognized the name instantly, Elliot M. Same profile photo. A black and white self-portrait. Face half-shadowed, like he was hiding from daylight. He messaged first. "I've been following your work for a while. You see things differently." I replied with a cautious smile emoji. He asked about my photography. Said he loved how I framed silence. How I made the mundane seem holy. It felt flattering. Not in a gross way. Not in a send nudes way. Just seen. And for someone who lives behind the lens, always documenting others, that felt rare. We texted for 2 weeks before meeting. He was articulate. Respectful. A little intense. He sent voice notes at night, low, soothing, like he was whispering into the space between my shoulder blades. He said things like, "I think your eye is the kind that aches when it's not capturing something real." And, "I bet you sleep with one arm across your stomach, like you're holding yourself." He wasn't wrong. It was just unnerving that he knew. Our first date was a rooftop bar in Shoreditch. He wore all black, soft-spoken, smelled like cedar and something faintly medicinal. He didn't try to kiss me, but he did brush my hand when he passed me a napkin. And when I laughed at something he said, he looked at me like he was memorizing it. The second date was at my studio. He brought red wine and strawberries. We sat on the floor, legs tangled, talking about art and intimacy and why people share so much online. There was tension, slow and low-burning. Not urgent, but close. We didn't sleep together that night, but we kissed. Deeply, slowly. His hand at the back of my neck, thumb brushing the edge of my jaw. When he left, he said, "You're not like what you show. You're softer, sadder." I didn't know whether to thank him or correct him. Then one night, I was scrolling through my followers. I don't usually check, but I'd posted something vulnerable, a self-portrait, more exposed than usual, and the engagement was high. 3 accounts caught my eye. All liked the photo within seconds of each other. All had similar bios. Beauty is truth. Some people feel too much. I see you. All followed the same exact people, me, a few art accounts, and each other. I clicked through. Different names. Different profile pictures. But something about the captions, short, strange, slightly off, felt familiar. I scrolled back through my DMs, and there they were. Messages from months, even years ago. From usernames I'd barely registered. All with similar phrasing. "You have an old sadness. Your hands look like they've held secrets. I dreamt about your photos last night." It hit me slowly. These weren't different men. They were all him. Elliot, Jay, Mateo, Ben, and more. 10 accounts. One voice. One fixation. Me. I felt sick. Not screaming, running down the street sick. Just quiet. Cold. Like the moment you realize the door you thought was locked isn't. I didn't confront him right away. I needed proof. I ran a reverse image search on one of his profile pictures. It led to a wedding website in Ohio. Different name. Different life. But the same face. He'd stolen it. The man I'd kissed, the one who brought strawberries and whispered things about my loneliness, was a lie. I didn't even know his real name. I texted him. "How many names do you have?" He replied instantly. I knew you'd notice eventually. It's not what you think. I needed to understand you first. Before you could understand me. This was always leading somewhere true. I blocked him. But he messaged me from another account. That wasn't our ending. I blocked that one too. He made another. And another. He never threatened me. Never showed up at my door. But he was always there. Liking photos within seconds of posting. Leaving cryptic comments that only I would recognize. Still waiting for the one where you're not hiding. You never photograph your mouth. Why? You once said, loneliness is a shape. What shape am I? I deleted all my old posts. Set everything to private. Changed my number. Still, I felt watched. The worst part? Sometimes late at night, I missed him. Not the real him, whichever version that was. But the voice. The presence. The way he had studied me. Understood the rhythm of my captions, the way I framed light, the subtle curve of my wrist in mirror selfies. He'd noticed what others didn't. Because he'd been watching for years. I told my friend Clara. She said, that's stalking. I said, it didn't feel like that. Until it did. One night, I got a letter. Real paper. No return address. Just my name. Inside, a printed photo. Not one I'd taken. One of me. In my studio. Back turned. Taken from outside the window. At night. I froze. Then flipped it over. He'd written, you're always most beautiful when you think you're alone. I called the police. Filed a report. They couldn't do much. No threats. No physical harm. Just presence. I moved. Changed cities. Made a new account. No photos of myself. Just landscapes. Abstracts. Shadows. He hasn't found it yet. Or maybe he has. Sometimes I get new followers who don't post anything. No bio. No name. Just there. Watching. I still take photos. Still believe in framing the world. But I don't post everything. Some things stay in my camera roll. Some things stay in my head. Some things aren't meant to be seen. I don't know what his name was. I don't care anymore. I've had bad dates before. There was the guy who brought his mother to the cafe just to meet me. The one who insisted on ordering for me and got every item wrong. And the one who spent the first 45 minutes explaining cryptocurrency as if it were a love language. But never, until Liam, had I been on a date with someone who brought a framed photo of another woman to the table. And not just any photo. A full 8x10. Glossy. In a wooden frame with little gold leaves around the edges. He placed it delicately like it was part of the place setting. Fork, knife, water glass, framed portrait of his ex. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. Then he said, that's Claire. Like that explained everything. Let me back up. I met Liam through a book club for people who didn't actually read the books. We were both members of an online forum about modern fiction, and when someone posted, let's meet up IRL, I went. I was new to the city. I needed faces, not just usernames. Liam was one of the first people I noticed. He was tall with the kind of rumpled, academic look that only works if you're actually smart, which he was. He quoted Baldwin and Atwood and made jokes about how dystopian it is to scroll dating apps while reading 1984. He asked thoughtful questions. He didn't interrupt. He laughed at my sarcasm instead of trying to one-up it. So when he asked if I wanted to grab dinner sometime, just us, no book guilt, I said yes. He chose the restaurant, a quiet French bistro tucked away behind a florist and an antique shop. The kind of place that feels like a secret. I arrived early as usual. He was 5 minutes late, carrying a canvas tote bag and looking slightly breathless. Sorry, he said. Had to run back for something. That something turned out to be Claire. The moment he placed the photo down, I thought maybe it was a prank. Or a performance art piece. Or some strange tribute to a dead sister. He saw me staring. She's beautiful, isn't she? He said. I nodded slowly. Who is? My ex, he said. Claire. We were together for 6 years. I blinked. Oh, I managed. She passed away, he added. I softened. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said. I mean, yes, thank you. It's been 2 years. But I like to keep her close. I stared at the picture. Her smile was perfect. A little too perfect. Like a stock photo of happiness. He must have read my face. She was a photographer, he said. Took that on our trip to Santorini. Set the camera on a timer. We hadn't even showered yet. Isn't that wild? You'd never know. I nodded. She looks kind. She was, he said, eyes not on me. She once rescued a squirrel from a bicycle tire, nursed it back to health, fed it blueberries from a spoon. I smiled politely. The waiter arrived. Liam barely looked at the menu. "We'll have the duck," he said. "Unless you're vegetarian?" I wasn't, but I hated being ordered for. "I'll have the trout," I said. He nodded, unbothered, then turned back to the photo. Claire loved trout. She used to say it was the underdog of fish. I took a sip of water. For the next 20 minutes, he told me stories about their life together. The time they got locked in a museum after hours. The picnic that turned into a thunderstorm. The inside jokes I didn't understand, but pretended to enjoy. I kept waiting for the moment he'd shift gears, ask me something, anything about my own life. It never came. Eventually I said, "So, what made you want to start dating again?" He looked surprised, as if I'd interrupted a monologue. "I think Claire would want me to," he said. "That's generous of her," I replied. He chuckled. "She always said I was too charming to be alone for long." I forced a smile. "She used to call me a handsome disaster." I nodded. "And are you? A disaster?" "Depends on the day." He sipped his wine. By the time the food arrived, I was already planning my exit. I'd been on enough dates to know when someone isn't looking at you, they're looking through you, at a memory they haven't finished editing. He ate quickly, talked more. About how Claire loved the smell of old books. How she once painted their entire bedroom in one night, barefoot and high on espresso. How she cried during commercials. At one point, he said, "She would have loved your earrings." I touched them, self-conscious. "Thanks. She had a pair like that. Wore them on our anniversary." I wanted to scream. Instead, I choked down my trout. After dessert, which I didn't order, but which he insisted on sharing, he asked if I wanted to walk. I hesitated, then said yes. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. We walked through the streets, quiet and dimly lit. He carried the framed photo in his tote bag. I asked gently, "Do you bring her on every date?" He paused. "Not every date, just the ones that might matter." I stopped walking. He turned to face me. "I'm not Claire," I said. "I know. I'm not here to replace her. I wouldn't ask you to." "Then why is she here?" He looked down at the bag. "Because she's part of me," he said. "You can't love me without loving her ghost." I took a step back. "I think you're still in love with her," I said. He frowned. "Of course I am. That's not a compliment." He looked genuinely confused. "I thought you'd understand," he said. "You're thoughtful. You read. You're not like the others." "The others?" He nodded. "The ones who got uncomfortable. Who didn't want to talk about her. Who acted like she was a threat." "She is a threat," I said. "To whatever this is." He went quiet. I took another step. Then I said, "I hope you find peace. I really do." He looked at me like I'd just spoken in another language. And maybe I had. I walked away. He didn't follow. Back home, I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Pity? No. Sadness? Yes. But not for Claire. For him. And for myself, for wanting to be picked by someone who hadn't stopped choosing someone else. A week later, I saw a new post on the forum. Someone wrote, "Went on a date with a guy named Liam. He brought a framed photo of his ex." There were replies. "Oh my God. Same. Mine was a Polaroid. But yes." He told me I reminded him of her. Then cried. We created a private thread. We called it the Claire Club. There were 11 of us. We shared stories. We laughed. And then we said nothing for a while. Because we were all wondering the same thing. Why did we stay as long as we did? I still think about Claire. About the woman in the photo. I wonder if she knew what kind of man he was becoming. I wonder if she would have stayed. I wonder if she would have told him, "Let me go." The thing is, he was nice. I need that on record. Before everything else. He was attentive. He asked questions. He listened, or at least seemed to. He didn't interrupt, didn't brag, didn't make me feel like I had to earn the space I was taking up. And that's what made it hard to explain later. Because when you tell people a man became obsessive, they expect an early warning sign. A twitch, a flinch, a red flag you ignored. But Callum Sykes smiled softly, laughed at his own awkwardness, and told me he liked lemon cake because it reminded him of his grandmother. He seemed harmless. Until he wasn't. We met the way people meet now, an app. His messages were simple. Just enough punctuation to feel thoughtful, not so polished that I felt like I was being interviewed. He asked about my work, I'm a graphic designer, and didn't respond with, "Oh, so you're an artsy type, like so many others." He said, "That's cool. I'd love to see how your brain works." Which felt flattering at the time. We agreed to meet for coffee. Low stakes. Daylight. Table between us. Safe. The date was nice. That's the word I keep coming back to. He was a little too eager, but not in a way that made me uncomfortable. Just leaning in too often. Smiling a little too hard when I spoke. Laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't really jokes. We shared a slice of lemon cake. I offered the last bite. He declined. He said, "I want you to have it." I said, "We can split it." He said, "You're generous." I like that. By the end of the hour, I was ready to go. Not because anything was wrong, just because I'd had enough social energy for one afternoon. Outside, he offered to walk me to the station. I didn't say no. It was raining lightly. He held his coat over both our heads. Cute, if you're in the mood for that kind of thing. At the station entrance, he paused. I knew what was coming, so I stepped back and smiled gently. "Not tonight. Let's take things slow." I said it kindly. Not as a test. Not as a rejection. Just a boundary. He nodded. Smiled tightly. "Of course," he said. And I thought that was it. Until my phone buzzed. 30 minutes later. "Just wanted to say I had a great time." I replied, "Me too. Thanks for walking me." 2 minutes later. Was worried I read the signals wrong. Did I do something wrong? I didn't reply right away. Then, "You seemed really into it. I just want clarity." Followed by, "Please don't ghost me. You're not like other girls. Please don't be like other girls. I just want to understand." I felt something. Did you? By the time I got home, I had 12 messages. And 32 missed calls. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I didn't feel scared. Not yet. Just confused. Disappointed. And tired. I turned off my phone. Ran a bath. Let myself float for a while in silence. I tried to tell myself it was just poor judgment. An anxious guy. Maybe a bad day. Maybe he drank too much coffee. But part of me knew. Knew what this kind of need smelled like. Knew what it meant when a man turned your "not tonight" into a referendum on his worth. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. Instagram notifications flooded in. Callum had found me. He'd liked every public photo I'd posted in the last 2 years. All 143 of them. From my graduation photo to my niece's 3rd birthday party, to a picture of my avocado toast from 2018. I hadn't told him my handle, but it wasn't hard to find. My name isn't common, and my account isn't private. I use it to share design work sometimes. Most of the likes came between 1 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. I felt my stomach knot. It wasn't the volume. It was the intent. The digital equivalent of pressing your face against someone's window at night and saying, "I just want to understand." I didn't respond. I archived all my posts. Set my account to private. Then I told myself to move on. He hadn't threatened me. Hadn't shown up. Hadn't sent anything violent or explicit. But that's the thing about obsession. It doesn't have to explode to be dangerous. Sometimes it just lingers. Fills the air like smoke. The messages continued. Not constantly, but enough. "Hey, I just want to talk. Closure would be nice. You said we could take things slow. This feels like silence. I deserve better than being ignored." And then eventually, "Fine. I get it. You're just like the rest." I didn't reply, but I didn't feel done, because I knew he wasn't. A week later, I ran into him. By coincidence, maybe, but it didn't feel that way. I was at a bookstore near my flat. The kind of place that smells like dust and ink and warm paper. I go there on Sundays. It's part of my routine. He was in the poetry section. He turned the moment I walked past. "Maya," he said too casually. My breath caught. He smiled. "Didn't know you came here." I didn't answer. Didn't ask what he was doing there. Didn't say it was public, sure, but also personal. He held up a book. "I was just thinking about you." I nodded. "I have to go." He stepped closer. "Can we just talk?" I shook my head. "No." He looked wounded. "Just 5 minutes. I don't owe you anything." He clenched his jaw. "I was respectful. I walked you to the station. I didn't push. You called me 32 times. That's not respectful." His voice dropped. "You could have just said you weren't interested." I did. He stared at me, then said, "You're overreacting." I walked away. He didn't follow, but he didn't leave either. I watched him from the window. He stayed in the shop for another 30 minutes. Not reading. Just standing. I changed my routine after that. Different cafe, different grocery store. I started carrying a small keychain alarm. I told 2 of my friends and sent them his photo. Just in case, I said. They didn't laugh. I didn't hear from him again. Not directly, but I saw he'd made a new account. Followed me again, under a different name. Then unfollowed. Then followed again. Like he wanted me to know he was still watching. Still there. Still orbiting. It's been 6 months. I haven't been on a date since. I still check the locks twice each night. Still flinch when my phone rings from an unknown number. Still think about how quickly attention can turn into possession. Still hear his voice when I try to explain why he didn't touch me isn't the whole story. Because what he wanted wasn't sex or romance or connection. What he wanted was control, and I didn't give it to him. I still believe in kindness, but I no longer mistake insistence for sincerity. And when someone says, "You're not like other girls," I say, "Good," and leave. I met Eddie on a Sunday morning, under a canopy of sun-ripened peaches and overpriced artisanal honey. He offered to help me carry my crate of peonies. That should have been my first clue. No man volunteers to carry 30 pounds of flowers unless he's trying to impress someone, or hide something. But I was tired, and he was smiling, and the crate was heavy. So I said yes. I'm a florist. I run a small shop in East Dulwich that smells like eucalyptus and Old Hope. I believe in good arrangements and better meet cuties. I've built a career around beauty, which means I'm always slightly suspicious of it. But Eddie had that warm, approachable kind of handsomeness, the kind that doesn't feel like a trick. He said he was starting over. I assumed that meant a breakup or a career change, or maybe just a new flat and some impulse-purchased furniture. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. I liked that he didn't overshare. Most men on dating apps treat you like a therapist with benefits. He asked if I'd like to get lunch. I said yes before thinking about it too long. We went to a cafe down the street. He ordered a goat cheese tart and asked me about the first bouquet I ever sold. I told him about the funeral arrangement I made in college, how the lilies bloomed too soon, how I cried when the client hugged me. He didn't laugh. He said, "You feel things deeply, don't you?" I smiled. I try not to. He didn't offer his last name. I didn't notice. We went on 4 dates. Each one felt like a scene from a film that was too well written to be real. Date 1, the farmer's market. Date 2, a record shop followed by a walk along the river. Date 3, he brought wine and we drank it in the park, lying on his coat. Date 4, tapas in Soho, where he told me I had an old soul and a young smile. I rolled my eyes, but I liked it anyway. He never invited me to his place. Said it was a mess or in renovation or too far from wherever we happened to be. He always picked me up. He never let me call him after 9 p.m. I chalked it up to boundaries, or introversion, or maybe just a man who liked to keep things slow. I didn't ask too many questions. I was enjoying the story too much. The scarf incident happened on a Tuesday. We were driving back from a late lunch in Hampstead. It had started to drizzle, one of those lazy, sideways London rains that makes you feel like the sky's just bored. I'd taken off my scarf and tossed it somewhere in the front seat. He dropped me off outside my shop, leaned over to kiss me on the cheek, and then drove away. 20 minutes later, I realized I'd left the scarf in his car. I texted, "Hey, I think I left my scarf in the car. Mind if I grab it sometime?" He replied less than a minute later, "Sure. It's in the glove compartment. I'll swing by tomorrow, but if you're near, just grab it." I almost waited. But the rain had stopped, and I was only a 10-minute walk from where he'd parked. So I went. His car was unlocked. That surprised me. I opened the passenger door, sat down, and reached toward the glove compartment. The scarf was there, crumpled, slightly damp. So were a pair of women's sunglasses, a school newsletter, and a wedding ring. Not just any ring. A gold band, simple and scuffed, resting right on top of the papers like a forgotten truth. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The newsletter was titled, Langston Primary, May Edition. I stared at the name printed in bold at the top, the Langston Family Newsletter. Langston. Eddie Langston. I felt nauseous, and very, very awake. I closed the glove compartment slowly, walked back to my shop, locked the door behind me, sat behind the counter, and stared at a bouquet of tulips that suddenly looked ridiculous. Then I texted him, "Your wife must love the peonies." He didn't reply. I didn't expect him to. 30 minutes later, his number went out of service. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just felt cold, like I'd been standing outside the whole time, and didn't realize I was soaked until I stopped moving. I told Maya, my best friend, the next morning. She listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say, "I told you so." When I finished, she just said, "God, I hate men named Eddie." We laughed. It wasn't funny, but we laughed anyway. For a week, I replayed every moment. The way he never let me take photos of us. I looked terrible on camera. The way he always had an excuse to leave early. The time he got a call in the middle of dinner, stepped away, and came back saying, "Sorry, just work stuff." He'd been married the whole time. Had children. A school newsletter, for Christ's sake. I wondered what he told his wife. I wondered if she knew. I wondered how many other women had sat in that passenger seat and reached for the glove compartment thinking they'd find something small and harmless. I didn't report him. He hadn't broken any laws. Just my trust. And maybe his vows. I didn't want to be the woman who called and said, "Your husband kissed me on a tartan blanket in Hyde Park." I didn't want to be part of her unraveling, even if mine had already begun. Instead, I did what I always do when something hurts. I arranged flowers. I made a bouquet called Closure. Peonies naturally. Dahlias for strength. Blue thistle for protection. A single forget-me-not, tucked where only I could see. I didn't sell it. I kept it behind the counter for a month. 2 weeks later, a woman came into my shop. She was tall, with tired eyes and a wedding ring. She asked for a bouquet, something bright. My daughter's got a recital. I asked her name for the order slip. She said Langston. My stomach turned. I looked at her hands, then at her face. I didn't say anything, just made the bouquet. Tulips and sunflowers wrapped in soft paper. When I handed it to her, she smiled and said, "These are beautiful. I'm glad I found this place." I said, "So am I." She left. I never saw her again. Sometimes I wonder if she knew. Sometimes I hope she doesn't. Sometimes I hope she does. I still believe in meet cuties. But I keep my eyes open now. I ask last names. I check glove compartments. And I never, ever assume that a man carrying flowers understands what they mean. When I arrived at the restaurant, the hostess raised an eyebrow. "Name?" she asked, scanning the list. "Naomi Bell," I said. She blinked, then smiled thinly. "You're the third Naomi tonight." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She didn't laugh back. Instead, she tilted her head toward the dining area and said, "He's at the long table." I turned, and that's when I saw it. 1 man, 4 women, all seated around a rectangular table, like it was the final round of some twisted dating game show. And in the center, smiling like he'd just solved world hunger, was Troy Milner. My date. Let me rewind. We met on an app. Of course. Troy had a confident profile. Not cocky, just curated. A photo in a tailored blazer. One hiking. One from a speaking event where he was holding a microphone and gesturing like a TED Talk reject. His bio. Efficient communicator. Strategic thinker. Romantic pragmatist. I should have known. But I was curious. We messaged. He was articulate. Asked about my job copywriting, my thoughts on oat milk, I'm for it, and whether I liked restaurants that optimize time. I assumed he meant fast service, not speed dating. When I reached the table, he stood and spread his arms like a game show host. "Naomi," he said. "Welcome." The other women turned, all varying degrees of confused. I smiled tightly. "What is this?" He gestured to the chairs. "A date." I blinked. "With all of us?" He nodded. "Why not? Saves time. Energy. We feel the chemistry in real time." One of the women scoffed. Another sipped water like it was vodka. I didn't sit. He looked at me. "Don't you want a fair shot?" I stared at him, then said, "At what? Joining a cult?" He laughed. "You're funny. I like that." I turned to leave. But then one of the other women stood up too. She caught my eye and mouthed, "Drinks?" I nodded. We walked out together. Her name was Alyssa. She was a UX designer who had also met Troy on an app, who had also been told they were high compatibility due to shared values and assertive communication. We sat at a nearby bar and ordered margaritas. "I thought I was being punked," she said. "I thought it was a mistake," I replied. She raised her glass. "To men who think they're the prize." I clinked. "And to women who know better." Later that night, Troy messaged me. "You missed out." There were sparks. The other Naomi stayed. I didn't reply, but I checked the app. His profile was still active, still strategic, still delusional. Alyssa and I stayed friends. We created a group chat, named it The Table of Us. By the weekend, there were 6 of us in it. All of us had been invited by Troy. All of us had been told we were exceptional. All of us had heard the same lines. We compared screenshots. It was like watching a magician repeat the same trick in different cities. Eventually, we stopped talking about him, started talking about each other, about work, books, bad bosses, weird family holidays. We met up once a month. The table of us. No men allowed. Sometimes something ridiculous happens, and it ends up giving you something real. Not romance, but camaraderie, and laughter, and the sudden, welcome realization. You were never the fool. You were just the witness. I was dressed for a museum, not for a war zone. That's the first thing I thought when I saw the bunker. I wore a denim skirt, a soft sweatshirt, and my favorite silver earrings, small moons, nothing flashy. I had imagined we were going to a hidden cafe, maybe something quirky with mismatched chairs and overpriced tea. The kind of surprise date that ends in a long, meandering conversation and a second slice of cake. Instead, Luca pulled into a gravel lot off a rural road, gestured at a concrete building with no windows, and said, "You're going to love this." Then handed me ear protection. I stared at the headset like it had teeth. "What is this?" I asked. He grinned. "Shooting range. Indoor. Pretty badass, right?" I blinked. "You brought me to a shooting range?" He nodded, proud. "It's super safe. I booked us a lane. They walk you through it. You'll be fine." I didn't move. He leaned in. "Come on, Roz. Try something new." I tried to smile. "You know I'm vegetarian, right?" He laughed. "What does that have to do with anything?" I didn't know how to explain it. That I don't like loud noises. That violence, even simulated, makes my skin crawl. That I've built a life around softness, books, plants, watercolor, quiet. That I don't want to be badass. Just safe. But Luca was already walking ahead, swinging the door open like he was leading me into a theme park. I followed slowly. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and rubber. The walls were lined with glass cases filled with weapons, handguns, rifles, things I didn't know the names of. A man behind the counter looked up. "First time?" I nodded. He handed me a clipboard. "Sign the waiver." I hesitated. Luca nudged me. "You'll be fine. I'll help you." I signed, because part of me still thought, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this is one of those things that looks scary and ends up being fun. Maybe I'm being dramatic. That word again, the one women get taught to fear. They gave us a safety briefing. Short, clipped, mechanical. Then they handed Luca the gun. And me the target. It was an outline of a human torso. I froze. "I don't think I can do this," I said. He laughed. "It's just paper." I stared at the figure. He handed me the headset. "Come on. Don't be that girl." I put on the earmuffs. The world went muffled. But not enough. The first shot echoed through my ribs like a punch. Then another. Then another. I flinched each time, heart pounding. Luca was beaming. "Your turn," he said, handing me the gun like it was a gift. I shook my head. "I can't." He rolled his eyes. "It's not even loaded yet." "I don't care." "Roz." I said no. His face changed. The charm drained away. "You're being ridiculous." I took off the headset. I didn't sign up to simulate murder. His jaw tightened. "It's just a sport. You're being dramatic." There it was again. That word. I stepped back, handed him the headset, and walked out. He didn't follow. Just stood there, holding the gun, watching me leave. Outside, the air felt better. Lighter. I sat on the curb and breathed. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from restraint. From the effort it took not to snap. Not to yell. Not to cry. Later, he texted, "You failed the vibe check." And then, "Girls like you never get it." I didn't reply. Just blocked his number. Then I opened my dating profile and added a new line. No weapons. No surprises. No tests disguised as dates. The next morning I made tea, watered my plants, watched the light move across my kitchen wall, and felt proud. Not because I was brave, but because I had listened to myself. Because I had walked away. I didn't even dislike him. That's the part that makes it hard to explain. Russell Dade wasn't a disaster. He wasn't rude or creepy or offensive in any obvious way. He just talked too much. smiled like he was in a toothpaste commercial, made everything theatrical, as though we were co-stars in a romantic comedy that only he had seen. When I turned down the second drink, I did it gently, kindly. I said, "It's been nice, but I think we're different kinds of people." He tilted his head like he was trying to read a plot twist in my face. Then he smiled and said, "You'll change your mind." I laughed because it felt safer than frowning, but I meant it when I said no. I just didn't know he would treat that like an invitation. 2 days later, he showed up at the cafe where I work. I was wearing my apron mid-shift, covered in oat milk and espresso grounds. My hair was up in a claw clip, and I had a smear of cinnamon across my wrist from an earlier spill. It wasn't a moment made for romance. It was a moment made for dry shampoo and a long shower. And then I saw him, standing in line, holding flowers and a piece of paper. At first I thought, oh no, not this. Then I thought, maybe it's just a coincidence. But then he caught my eye, smiled like a magician about to pull a dove from his sleeve, and took a deep breath. I knew I was in trouble. He stepped up to the counter. I braced myself. He didn't order coffee. Instead, he unfolded the paper and said, 7 reasons you're wrong about us. Out loud, in front of 3 customers and my manager. I froze. He began. 1. You said there was no spark. But sparks are often invisible to the person holding the match. I felt it. You're just scared. I blinked. 2. You think we're different. But opposites attract. You're quiet, I'm expressive. You write poems, I write screenplays. It's the same soul, different fonts. Someone behind him coughed. 3. You didn't let yourself relax. You were guarded. That's not your fault. It's society. But I saw through it. My manager, Kara, stepped forward. Sir, we're kind of busy. He held up a hand. Just a minute. I'm almost done. Kara looked at me. I shrugged. Mortified. He continued. 4. You smiled when I said you'd change your mind. That's not nothing. I wanted to crawl into the espresso machine. 5. You didn't block my number. Which means part of you wanted this. I had. I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. 6. I brought you flowers. Not gas station ones. Real ones. Gerber daisies. You said you liked them in your bio. I had. Once. 3 years ago. 7. I believe in us. Even if you don't yet. He finished with a flourish. Held out the flowers. The cafe was silent. Someone's cappuccino was hissing in the background like it was judging us all. I said very quietly, Russell. This isn't okay. He blinked. I just needed to say it. I stepped back. I already gave you an answer. He smiled, faltering. Yeah, but I thought if I just showed you. You did. And? I still mean no. His face changed. Not angry. Just confused. As if rejection made no sense in the face of such performance. But I was respectful, he said. I didn't yell. I brought flowers. I'm being vulnerable. You're being loud, I said. And I'm working. He looked around. People were watching. He lowered his voice. This isn't how it's supposed to go. I nodded. Tell me about it. He left the flowers on the counter. Walked out with the script still in his hand. I watched him go. Then threw the bouquet out with the coffee grounds. Later, on my break, I sat behind the building and tried to laugh about it. But my hands were shaking. Not because I was scared. Just tired. Tired of men thinking effort equals entitlement. Tired of romance that ignores boundaries. Tired of being turned into a stage. That night, he texted. I thought you'd be different. You're just like the rest. You didn't even listen. I was sincere. You'll regret this. I blocked him. Finally. The next morning, I wrote a poem. Not about him. About breath. About silence. About saying no and meaning it. I read it at an open mic later that week. The crowd clapped politely, and one woman came up afterward and said, That thing you wrote, that was about a man who talked too much, right? I smiled. Yeah, I said, but not just one. I don't say yes to blind dates. Not because I'm above them. Just because I've spent enough time around well-meaning friends to know that he's different usually means he owns a gong. But this time I said yes. Because my friend Lisa wouldn't shut up about it. Because I'd just finished a 6-week detox from dating apps. Because I was bored. He's a guide, she said, in the same tone someone might say, he's a pilot. I asked guide where. She said, to Truth. I should have known then. But I was in a generous mood. I met Jonathan Dorr at a vegan cafe in Camden. The kind of place where the menus are printed on recycled linen, and the chairs all wobble slightly, like they're also on a journey. He stood up when I arrived. Tall, linen shirt, beaded necklace, no socks. In February, he took both my hands in his and held them for a beat too long. "I'm so glad you answered the call," he said. I smiled thinly. It was Lisa's call. I just picked up. He laughed loudly, too loudly for 10 a.m. on a Sunday. We sat. He ordered a turmeric latte and a plate of raw seed crackers. I ordered black coffee and toast. He looked pained. Toast can be a metaphor for resistance. I said, "So can lattes." He smiled. "See, you're already opening." The conversation started out fine. He asked about my work. I'm a neuroscience researcher with a focus on cognition and decision-making. He nodded slowly, like I'd just confessed to stealing souls. "That makes sense," he said. "You live in the mind. I live in the field." The field, the energetic field, the body, the breath, the memory of the earth. I sipped my coffee. He continued. "I help people realign with their knowing. I unstick their patterns." I asked, "Are you a therapist?" He smiled. "Labels are prisons." I said, "But degrees are useful." He didn't laugh. Things took a sharp turn around the time the waiter brought our food. Jonathan tilted his head and said, "Can I offer you something?" I said, "As long as it's not unsolicited feedback." He grinned. "I'd like to give you a spiritual diagnosis." I blinked. "Eh, what?" He reached into his satchel. Of course he had a satchel, and pulled out a small obsidian stone. Then he placed it gently on the table, next to my toast. "You hold tension in your jaw," he said. "That usually means unprocessed shame from childhood." "I chew gum," I said. He nodded solemnly. "A coping mechanism." I took a bite of my toast slowly. Undeterred, he pointed to my wine choice. Yes, we were now splitting a bottle of red. "Cabernet," he said. "That's a grief grape. Lots of suppressed emotion." It was the cheapest. He leaned in. "You're avoidant." I leaned back. "You're presumptuous." He smiled again, a little too serenely. "That resistance? It's your shadow self. She's scared of being seen." I stared at him. "I'm not scared of being seen," I said. "I'm scared of being studied without permission." His face went soft, like I'd just proven his point. "I can help you with that," he said. "Help me what?" "Unblock your third chakra." I put down my fork. "This is a date," I said. He nodded. "Everything is a mirror. This moment is an invitation." "To what?" "To surrender." I laughed. He didn't. I paid my half of the bill. He said, "Money is just an extension of scarcity mindset." I said, "So you're not covering your share?" He chuckled. "You're funny." I left a tip. We stepped outside. He followed me down the street. "You're resisting," he said. "But that's okay. The feminine resists before it receives." I stopped walking, turned, and said, "I'm not resisting. I'm recoiling." He blinked. "Don't be afraid of your healing," he said. "I'm not," I said. "I'm just afraid of narcissists with God complexes." He opened his mouth. I raised my hand and walked away. That night, he messaged me on Instagram. I really felt our polarities clashing. There's medicine in that. I blocked him, then texted Lisa. "You owe me a drink." She replied, "I warned you, but you said you were bored." I said, "If I ever say that again, just throw tofu at me." He still posts videos. I checked once. He's got a following, a small army of people who repost his quotes in pastel fonts. Your trauma is not your truth. Let your body grieve the version of you that betrayed your light. Love is breath, not performance. I get it. People need hope. But hope should never sound like a diagnosis. I still go on dates. But I ask better questions now. Like, do you own a tuning fork? Have you ever used the word womb space in a non-medical context? Do you think women are portals? And if the answer is yes, I run. Because I don't need a guide. I need a grown-up. I've always been the cautious one. The one who double-checks the stove, who keeps an emergency kit in the boot of the car, who tells a friend exactly where I'm going whenever I agree to meet someone new. But when I moved to Devon 6 months ago, trading London's noise for sheep pastures and misty lanes, I started to think maybe caution had turned into isolation. So I downloaded a dating app. Just to look. Just to remind myself I was still curious. That's how I met Gareth. He messaged to begin with. Polite, articulate, maybe a little formal. He said he liked that I didn't overshare. I liked that he didn't push me. After 3 weeks, he suggested we meet. There's a meadow I found, he said. It's quiet, off the usual paths. No signal, though. Just a heads up. No signal? I typed back. No distractions, he replied. Just space. And stillness. Something about it felt romantic, even cinematic. I hesitated, then said yes. He sent me a dropped pin. It looked remote. An hour's drive from my village, past 2 hamlets I'd never heard of. I told my neighbor, Fran, that I was going for a long hike. Just stretching the legs, I said. Might meet someone on the trail. She nodded. You've got your phone, yeah? Always. I left at noon on Sunday. The drive was longer than I'd thought. The GPS guided me through narrowing lanes, over cattle grates, past mossy stone walls. I lost signal halfway in. The last notification was a photo from Fran of her cat asleep in a salad bowl. When I finally arrived, the field stretched out before me, golden quiet, edged by low rock walls and a single leaning oak. And there he was, Gareth, standing alone in the center, beside a tartan blanket with 2 brown paper bags set neatly on top. No car, no backpack, no dog, just him. I parked and stepped out, keys in hand. I gave him a small wave. He didn't wave back, just smiled. You made it, he said. I did. I tucked my keys into the inside pocket of my coat, zipped it shut. The air smelled like crushed grass and something faintly metallic. Beautiful, isn't it? He asked. It is, I said, scanning the horizon. Very quiet. No distractions, he repeated. He handed me a wooden cup of pale lemonade. I took it, but didn't drink right away. I wasn't thirsty. We sat. He cross-legged, me perched on the edge of the blanket. I made sandwiches, he said. Egg and cress. I took one, mostly to be polite. He unwrapped his carefully, slicing it in half with a penknife he pulled from his pocket. We talked. Or rather, he talked. About the importance of stillness. About how modern life was too loud. About how people didn't know how to be alone anymore. I nodded, murmured agreements. But a tightness had started to build in my chest. Something about the way he watched me, not with interest, but with expectation. Like I was a script he'd already read. I reached into my coat for my phone, thinking I might check the time. No signal. Still, I checked anyway. 1 bar. Then nothing. I put it away. Do you come here often? I asked. Only with people who might understand it. I smiled faintly. It's lovely, but I may need to head back soon. Early morning tomorrow. He tilted his head. You just got here. I know. I didn't realize how long the drive would be. He didn't respond. Just stared. Then stood up. So I stood too. The shift in the air was immediate. I planned this for us, he said. His voice was calm, but something in his jaw tightened. You owe me your time. I blinked. I appreciate this, really. But I didn't promise. It's rude, he cut in. To leave when someone's made an effort. I'm sorry, I said, stepping back slightly. It's not personal. He stepped forward. I reached into my coat for my keys. Nothing. My fingers searched again. Every pocket. The lining. Gone. My heart dropped. I looked up at him. He was still standing, hands empty, eyes steady. But he smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. You dropped something? He asked. Did you take my keys? He didn't answer. I scanned the field. Empty. Still. No houses. No parked cars. Just wind and quiet. I want my keys back, I said. I don't have them, he said. Maybe you lost them. I turned and walked away. Not running, just moving, heart pounding. My car was still there. Locked. Of course it was. I tried the doors anyway. Then circled the car, scanning the grass, checking under the tires, inside my boots. Nothing. My phone. Maybe I could call someone, even for a second. I pulled it out. No service. I turned to look back. Gareth was seated again, sipping his lemonade like nothing had happened. Panic pulsed under my skin. I knelt in the grass, pretending to search. I didn't want to show fear. Not yet. Then, by chance or mercy, I saw it. A glint of silver near the base of a thistle. My keys. I snatched them up, heart racing. I didn't look back. Didn't speak. Just walked. Steady. Deliberate. Back to the car. I didn't run until the engine turned over. I drove fast. Faster than the roads wanted. I didn't exhale until I saw a sign for the A road and the first flicker of a signal bar. Back in my village, I parked and sat in the car for a long time. Fran's cat photo was still there, unread. I messaged her. If I ever say I'm going somewhere without signal again, stop me. Then I blocked Gareth, deleted the app, and moved my keys into the tiniest zipped pouch I could find.